they realize that, oh, the reason why I invested in this company is because of the IPs. So if VeVe was to go down, I want to be able to own those IPs or own these NFTs and safeguard them somewhere, that if VeVe were to go down, I still have access to my assets. Hey everybody, interoperability have been a major discussion within the VeVe community over the past 2 weeks. So in this episode, we'll be talking about the reasons why many people want interoperability, why people are talking about it now, simply because over the past 2 years, VeVe have missed multiple deadlines to roll out this feature. Why are people talking about it now? Because the timing looks kind of weird. And last but not least, we also talk about a technical challenge that is potentially, and this is only a hypothesis, to explain why VeVe has not been able to roll out interoperability, and it might have something to do with royalties for major IPs like Disney. Let's get to it. So in the past few weeks, I've noticed that there's been a lot of talks about interoperability, and this is a topic that I don't know much about, and honestly, I don't care much about, but people have been talking about it. So I knew that I had to do some research to educate myself. And another question that I had was like, why are people talking about it now? So I feel like this is a very relevant topic, a very trendy topic to talk about in our podcast. And I think a lot of these discussions are not firsts or anything. Most of them are very reasonable from the community, especially during this time. I have some questions for you later, but this is what I've learned so far to answer my question of why are people talking about interoperability now. So the first thing is the fact that VeVe promised this feature in 2021 but haven't been able to carry it out. I think they will have interoperability eventually. It's just that they have been missing a few deadlines, and that kind of frustrates some people, right? Which is very reasonable. Right. And then recently, there have been cases where people minted collectibles and they got taken back. Most recently, I think there was a case with the potion. Somebody minted a mint 26 of Dumbo, which should not be publicly available. So VeVe took it back. And then there were cases of people's account getting banned and they didn't have access to their collectibles for months. And these are the folks who were not banned because they did illegal activities. It was just like, the system alerts that got them into that situation, right? And then I feel like there's some people who just want self-custody of their very valuable assets. Just like you, for example. Me, I do care, but I don't care as much as people who have a lot more at risk, like you and other whales and many other folks in the community. Especially, our collections can be worth a lot of money and we carry them around in our phone, and there isn't like a facial recognition feature or anything. So it's not the safest method to protect our assets. And I think so those are the reasons why people want interoperability. But I think the reason why people have been talking about it now is because VeVe is not doing well and we've been losing users left and right. Prices are tanking. So I feel like there is some concerns in the community that VeVe might not become what people expected it to be. Hey guys, just a quick message. Every week I, Mr. V, work over 20 hours to bring you the most non-BS VeVe content. English is my second language, and there were nights we recorded until 1 a.m. My brain stopped processing and I naturally spoke Vietnamese to him, and it got pretty weird. But that's just how dedicated we are to this podcast. In return, we ask you to enter a gentleman agreement. We will continue working until 1 a.m. for you, but we ask you to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a rating, and tweet at us to tell us what you think, because those comments will ultimately help us to refine the content just for you. That's it. That's all you need to do. Let's get back to it. And because of that reason, they realize that, the reason why I invested in this company is because of the IPs. So if VeVe were to go down, I want to be able to own those IPs or own these NFTs and safeguard them somewhere, that if VeVe were to go down, I still have access to my assets. So I think these are all valid reasons. I read through so many Facebook posts and tweets of people, and they have really good points. What are your thoughts? Are you okay with not having it now and waiting for it later, or you want it now? So just let's go from very general, like the 30,000 feet perspective into the small details.
Sure. So what you mentioned with the whole promise, the vocalizing it and having it documented online through different sources, through different outlets, painted a very clear picture of VeVe's intentions. And with that comes that expectation, right? So that's like you mentioned, there's that expectation. A lot of people joined who probably were pretty savvy, who were familiar with Web3 and being able to transfer NFTs into their, wallets and taking it, just storing them safely. It wasn't as big of a deal for me when I started. It was more of, all right, how can I acquire this? How can I hold it? And I really wasn't worried because I didn't think what I had at the time was going to become what it has become for me, right? Like, I feel like my collection, and I've gotten plenty of feedback from different members of the community to affirm that, like, yes, what I have is worth safeguarding to the best of my ability. Do I want to be able to take the collectibles I have off the app and store them safely? Today, I absolutely do. Today, I have plenty to worry about. I have plenty invested in these particular collectibles. However, and one of the things I was hoping to talk about too, maybe we'll say that later, but it's more about balancing what I have in my account, because another one of your points was accounts are getting suspended temporarily or permanently for a number of reasons. I know that they have some ways to flag accounts based on the kind of activity. For example, if I pay X amount for a premium mint, if I pay a premium for a premium mint, that could cause my account to get flagged and suspended until they review it. Fortunately,
which does happen pretty often for special mint collectors like you.
Right. Fortunately for me, knock on wood, it hasn't happened so far, and I hope it doesn't. But you and I have known a few people who have had their accounts suspended because they sold a mint for a premium, and maybe it was like a vault, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for 2 or 3x over floor, and it might not be a special mint, but maybe it was a birth year, right? And so people really wanted to buy it and would pay those premiums, that could cause the accounts to get flagged. So before, it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't paying attention to the whole interoperability thing, but today I would like it mainly so that I could store it off of the platform, and I don't mind not interacting with anything for the time being, and I don't mind bringing it back onto the platform later on. But for the time being, I think it's important, particularly to the people who have been able to amass a really nice collection with special mints, or maybe quantity wise, they've put X amount of their savings, or So I think to give that option for the people, especially who have invested a significant amount into it, I just think it's worth what's the word I'm looking for? Escalating the process.
Yeah. So I read through the Facebook post, which I think you should just create like a random account like John Smith or whatever, and read through people's posts, because I really enjoy reading through Facebook, because people there, they are using their real Facebook accounts. So there's a lot more accountability and responsibility compared to people being anonymous on Twitter. So 2 quotes that stand out to me. This guy, Cal, said that, if I sold you a valuable physical comic, would you want to keep it at your house or mine? If you want to keep it at my house, you can come over and look at it as much as you want. And I think this really resonate with a lot of the folks in the community, because if you were to buy an AF-15 secret rare for 15,000 gems, right, or $15,000, you want to own it, right? You don't want you don't want to carry a risk of it being taken away, because $15,000. And if you were to have the gems to buy that particular comics, you have way, way, way more valuable NFTs on VeVe, right? So your portfolio is going to be huge. And also the other guy, Aaron, said that interoperability gives ownership and confidence that our assets can't be taken without prior notice, and also, being stored in cold storage for security. So a lot of people are, giving really good analogies and really good perspective, very short and sweet perspective on these issues. I think 2 other things that make interoperability very important. The first thing is, people think that being able to move these VeVe assets to other marketplaces like OpenSea or even the Immutable X marketplace will create more exposure to the app, because if people see, if people look at other collections and they see VeVe or Spider-Man or Batman, they'll be very curious to see what these actually are, because these brands are very, very well known globally. The other thing is, and I think from our group chat, Ecomi Homies talked about this, which is VeVe started with the initial user base of folks from the Web3 space. So if you're from Web3, you're familiar with crypto and NFT, you want to own your digital assets. So it is another good way to advertise to that core group of users, which is Web3. VeVe have always wanted to target the mass market. And that's why they make everything very user-friendly. They make everything centralized. So if there's any issue, they can work on them right away. But I think these are very valid points too, because its ownership is one thing, but it's also exposure to the app and resonating with the Web3 folks too.
Yeah, I never experimented with other projects outside of VeVe in terms of, digital assets, NFTs or digital collectibles. And like I've mentioned before, my exposure to Ecomi and the Ecomi token did bring me to VeVe. So, and after having spoken with a number of people, you're right. And so is Ecomi Homies, with the whole people wanting or expecting the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what VeVe had advertised in order to onboard so many people from that user base.
Yeah. And so my whole point is that I believe that VeVe will have interoperability. It's just that it would take them a while. Since the beginning of this episode, we've talked about why we need interoperability now. But I also saw a post from this guy, Zero Cool. I actually invited him to come on the pod maybe next week or 2 weeks away. He had a really good argument why VeVe is having challenges implementing interoperability. And I'm reading directly from his tweet, which got a lot of sentiment and comment from the community because people actually agree with him. He said that licensors must be fed. Currently, there's no way to enforce on-chain royalties. For now, royalties are left up to platforms like VeVe or OpenSea to manage until Ethereum developers work together to build a proposed standard called EIP 2981. This is not up to VeVe to develop. This EIP 2981 runs on top of Ethereum blockchain. It is a standard that focuses on signaling to market participants, OpenSea, for example, the royalty payment information for a given NFT. It allows for attaching royalty information to the token itself, thereby making use of a common data store and computation layer that all participants can access. Once royalty system is in place across multiple chains, you will start seeing the VeVe walls coming down. The first hint of interoperability is the IMX partnership with Polygon. So from my understanding of reading this tweet, it's about making sure that Disney and DC get paid. It's making sure that the royalties get to these IPs. And from my understanding of his tweet, and I'm a total blockchain beginner, it sounds like there's no standard method to enforce royalties across platforms. It is possible to enforce royalties on maybe like Immutable X Marketplace or even OpenSea. But if you were to take your Mickey Mouse NFT to a totally new platform and sell it to somebody else for $1,000 or whatever, there is no way to make sure that VeVe will get their 6.5% fee or whatever. Right now, from my understanding, from reading this tweet, again, because I'm a total beginner, it sounds like the royalty aspect is basically just having the data. Okay, 6.5% of the sales will go to Disney. It's just storing that data. It's actually not enforcing that, okay, the actual 6.5% of this sale will go to Disney. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then there have been some, counter arguments of, maybe they should limit it to be interoperable to certain platforms that do enforce it. So there's a lot of back and forth, but this is a very educational and very thoughtful discussion about why VeVe has not been able to roll out.
There's another person in the VeVe army, Z. He mentioned that it would be a great thing, and I think this would buy VeVe some time too, to have every person who joins VeVe before they start, when that time comes, to have everyone go through a few tutorials so that everyone at least, or so at the very least, VeVe has done their part to try and further educate the community on how to be responsible for their own collectibles when that time comes. You got me thinking a lot about how, Zero Cool's post got a lot of positive feedback, and I have the pleasure of being able to communicate with him amongst, maybe 40 other special mint collectors.
Oh, okay, good.
Who are still around.
Yeah.
And that this was news to me, but it makes sense. And so, sometimes getting news can be frustrating, but it brings us one step closer to understanding the why, and that's the biggest challenge, like understanding the why, or getting that response that we desperately need and have been asking for. So it's great that different members of the community are able to speak out and actually educate rather than just comment without having that background knowledge.
Yeah, I actually, because you mentioned he's in the special mint collectors, I actually looked at his collection and it's pretty nice. He has a beautiful mint in there.
Yeah, the guy's got a loaded profile with like those special mints, and it's really motivating to still see people collecting like that. And when I was starting, that was one of the first accounts that I noticed, and I was like, wow, I hope I can do something like that one day.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. I actually texted him on Twitter and then later on in the VeVe app to try to invite him to come on the podcast, because once in a while we have this like cloud of people talking about one specific topic in one specific direction. It's like, oh, interoperability, we need it now. Why hasn't it happened yet? And these are the benefits of having it now, right? And then once in a while, very rare, there will be like one person explaining things in a very thoughtful and in a very educational manner. So that was cool. So Zero Cool, thank you, and cannot wait to have you on and talk more about this particular topic of interoperability. That is it, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have enjoyed the episode today. And if you have, remember that gentleman agreement. We will continue working until 1 a.m. just for you. But in return, we ask you to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss out on the actionable and valuable insights, everything VeVe and Omi related. Don't forget to give us a rating and tweet at us to let us know what you think about the podcast so that we can refine the content better just for you. Thank you so much. We hope to see you again next time. Peace.